Hello there and welcome back to The Closet Historian and back to my sewing parlor for another sewing project, but today I'm not sewing apparel, I'm not even making a costume, I'm going to be adorning some windows, or rather one window and one sort of nook, vanity nook, as it were. And for some reason I find home decor sewing, making draperies, swags, tails, all that jazz actually rather intimidating. I think it's because I have to do a lot more math when making things like this. I normally do actually when I'm making clothes. But up in the pink and red dressing room, I knew I wanted to finish things off, trimming out the vanity nook and then also the window in draperies that coordinated with the curtains that are hanging to cover my clothes on the other side of the room. I picked up these faux silk curtains from a company called Half Price Drapes and I actually purchased 2 extra panels so that I could use the same exact fabrics to create something for the other side of the room, to tie it all in and hopefully make things seem cohesive. So do bear with me today as I go ahead and try and do my, I don't know, second or third ever curtaining project by trying to replicate some draperies from Versailles. In particular, I am talking, of course, about these sort of settee nook or like daybed nook curtains that are from Marie Antoinette's private rooms. And I actually have stuck my head into this room in person once when I visited Versailles several years ago on a very hot summer day. But here are some more 18th century examples of this sort of nook curtain. I especially liked the longer tails on this example and the more simplified set of swags we have here with the large tassel in the center. Sadly, mine will not be like silk satin damask with matching wallpaper. And then while I was up here and ordering fringes, I thought I would add some trim to the little pink chair so that it would better mimic vintage and antique examples. All right, pals, I am here in the pink and red and teal closet with the little pink slipper chair that I picked up at Home Goods last month, the month before. It all runs together. The cats are playing in the background. I have some Red Dead Redemption 2 ambiance music on back in my bedroom, so you might hear some of that Western ambience flowing through as well. But I have my little pink slipper chair here and I have a pile of trimmings because while this is already cute, it's a cute little chair. It's sort of Art Deco-ish for this room. I don't like the swivel, that metal down there at the bottom where you can see how this chair swivels. We don't want to see that. That's not attractive. Luckily, we have some bullion to cover that up. And in general, I just think this could look more like a, I don't know, circus drum and a little bit sillier, you know? We're edging our way towards extreme Victorian maximalist in this house, one corner at a time, one item at a time. And for that, we are going to add a bunch of trimming onto this chair and hope for the best. Of course, it will all be removable. Not that it really matters, because it's not like this is a antique of any kind, but if I change my mind, change the decor scheme in the future, it will technically be removable. So that's the perks of stitching things on instead of gluing them. Or at least I'm going to try and stitch as much as possible. We'll see how it goes. And to this endeavor, I do have a curved upholstery needle here. This one's a little worse for wear, but hopefully it will still do the job. I do have a large, almost a bodkin. It's still kind of sharp, large-eyed needle here as well. I have some thicker upholstery weight threads that I grabbed from downstairs, just some scissors, little snipping scissors, and some old pins to help me get this all on here. And mostly I'm hoping to cover up these kind of large, unfortunate stitches, which are helping to make this chair look as cheap as it was, with some of this trim here. So I have this that will go along there. Again, kind of adding to the circus vibes. Not that I'm going for a circus theme, but you know what I mean. For this particular chair, I am. And this is 3/16 millimeter trim, and this is from Deco Pro, and I will link them below. They're on Etsy, and they ship so quickly, and they have a lot of great upholstery trimmings. Then, of course, my long 6-inch long bullion fringe is going along the bottom here again, so that we don't have to look at this little bar down here. So I'll stitch that right into the upholstery, like so. And then I'm going to actually layer on this big fringe with tassels. I'm going to put some of this, this is hard to do with one hand, along the seat here. And then along the top of the bullion as well. And just layer that on around the chair. So we'll see how I do here. Just attaching this trim on. I will show you as much of the process as I can, one-handed with a phone, because unfortunately Oliver does not know how to help me out in the camera department yet, but we are of course hoping to train him up. Okay, so all I've done is pinned this trim 4.5 inches up from the bottom of the chair, which is where it just brushes the floor barely. And then I will go ahead and take my curved needle and I'm going to stitch through here and whip this on to the chair itself using my curved needle here. So I'm going to stitch this on, and then eventually I will cover this with the other trim in a moment anyhow, so it will not be seen. You can see here, I'm taking, this is where I've come out for my last stitch. I'm going in past the next set of bullion and then up between them, taking a stitch down underneath, like through the trim, down underneath into the upholstery, coming back out, and I'm just gonna go along every single one like that, taking that big whip stitch to get this trim onto the chair. Hey, cut it out. Sophie. Are you guys helping or no? I'm not sure this counts as helping, you know? I'll be honest. Hey, stop attacking my things. You're not allowed to eat this stuff. I will lock you out of the room. I will do it. Alright, I have got this far. I have our bullion trim. I have the trimmy trim on top of it. This is just sewn along the top, but that's alright. Now I need to try and sew the trim along the edge of the chair up here. Like that, so that it will look like this. And again, I'm just going to go ahead and stitch through the trim into the upholstery. And I probably will do 2 lines of stitching for this. One along the top and then one along the middle or bottom somewhere. This is, again, storage of a bubble. So I'll just go about to here, go all the way around. Obviously, I don't need to do it on the back side of this. So I'm just going around. This is just pinned over the stitch line here. I'm just taking a stitch through the top of the trim, kind of back stitching into the upholstery, all the way around the rim of the seat here. This is just a quick update to complain about the working conditions. I'm sewing the trim along here. I'm actually using some pliers to pull the needle through because it's quite thick where this is doubled up in here. But honestly, how am I supposed to keep stitching when this is happening? Well, first of all, he's getting fur everywhere, but he's just cutely curled up on the chair, sleeping there while I'm sewing the trim on. What an absurd creature. All right, so I'm just taking like a long, I don't know, whip stitch, I guess. Excuse me, Oliver. Thank you for helping. To go ahead and stitch this along atop of the stitching. Stitch it atop the stitching. So just cover that up. And I've got a lot of kitten help, so that should slow me down. Here's the finished trimmed out chair with little Ollie napping on it. And this one is just yelling at us. I don't know what his problem is, but you know, what are you gonna do? So I've got my trim on here. Sorry, the floor is very squeaky and the cats are yelling at me. This little guy is here. We have our little chair trimmed out like a drum. The seat's probably not perfectly evenly set on there because, again, I'm dealing with an Oliver. But here is what the chair looks like now that it's all trimmed out. And I think it's just a little bit cuter than it was before. Whereas this guy just stays consistently cute. Don't play with my tassels, Bubby. Don't do it. Don't do it. This is the loud boy. He purrs very loudly. Don't you, Mr. Zammies? Yes, Mr. Zamsams. And thus we see the real reason one needs a chair in their closet. Because where else are you going to pile all the random stuff? Sorry about that. Anyway, I had these curtains on this side of the room, we are aware. But I did not have any of this color on the other side of the room, and I did not have any curtains on the window. But I decided to go ahead and try something funky, and my proof of concept looks like this. So here is my first valance pelmet curtain thingy. I'm pretty pleased with it. It's not perfect, but it is pretty fun, all right? And there is a stepladder in the middle of the room. But here is the curtain, and I want to create something similar for this nook here, and almost have it look like a bed nook, or like where they have those little like settees in places like, you know, Versailles. Real casual environments, very laid back vibes. But this was my first try at swags and tails. And I'm going to do a larger swag that I will pin up in the middle with a tassel, and then more tails. The tails here do have the original, sort of like a double layered blackout curtain lining that these curtains come with. I think I will take that out so that, because you can see how these are pretty puffed up, which is something you kind of want for this, but I think it's a little too much for here. So I will go ahead and just line them with the pink silk, which matches this chair. Sort of like a mauve slash tan silk. And I'm going to line the tails for this. The other thing I have to decide is how deep I want this to go and how long I want the tails to be. Probably at least as long as these, or longer, right? Probably to the top of this desk, which means the tails will be longer than the swaggy thingy. So lots to figure out. I did do a lot of hand sewing on this, which is why it took me several more sessions across a couple of days to put together than I had anticipated. So that's unfortunate. And this is actually just stapled to a piece of wood, and then it's just held there with tension right now. So I should probably screw it up into the window in a more permanent way. But honestly, it's wedged in there pretty good. So we'll see. Over here, I'm definitely going to have to screw it into the opening. But the opening over here is drywall, which makes that much easier to affix anything to, because the plaster is a problem, but the drywall, it's not so bad. And then the other thing I have to do with the nook here is rearrange the mirrors. Of course, one had fallen down. These candle holder thingies are going to have to come down. These candle sconce things. These are just 1950s, 60s styro, or whatever that company is. 50s through the 70s, I believe. But these are only held up with, what is it called? Command strips. Actually, all of this is. As you can see, one ripped off the wall. So I'm going to have to move those down because the curtains are going to interact with it a little bit more. And in general, I just think they need to come down. And then I'll fill this in with more mirrors and like reorganize the whole space, basically. And I will have to show you the new obi that I picked up to go over the dresser because I grabbed something that was in more appropriate colors for this room. But right now, again, I have extra fringes. I have a hat that I wore out and about the other day. I have too much in the way, so I can't fully show you that now, but I will get back to it and show you more of this delicious obi I have hanging on here. I'll link the Etsy shop where I picked this up because although it did ship all the way from Japan, this was $33, I believe, so a screaming deal for a formal obi. This was described as a Fukuro obi, but it is like double-sided and very thick, and the pattern goes all the way through, so it's almost like a Maru obi, which is the most formal of obi. So very fun for under $50. And I actually did pick up a second obi because this was too good to not snap up. This again is a formal obi in shades of light blue, silver, yellow gold, black, and green. And this has pine and peacock and plum blossom and a couple of peonies probably. But look at that peacock obi. So sick. Oh yeah, it does have peonies as well. So just about as gorgeous as it gets. Hopefully this will be hanging in the lounge downstairs once I have that room together, which seems eons away at this point. So this nook, what I need to do to make something similar to this to go in here is I need to measure the distance across the top here, and then how long I want the little drapey drapeys. And I will make my drapey swaggy thing exactly the correct measurement here, but the piece of wood I will be nailing it to, I do want to make sure that that is a 1/2 inch narrower than this finished thing, because the fabric wrapping around the ends of it is going to add on a little bit to the width. So I only want to cut this to 47.5 as opposed to 48 evenly. Of course, your mileage may vary. And then deciding how long to make these drapeys, it's less on how long I would like them. I think I would like them to reach the top, like stop at the top of the desk, at least be a tiny bit longer than this. But it depends on how much fabric I have as opposed to how much I really want them. If you're doing something where you can just decide because you're buying the fabric afterwards or you have plenty of fabric to work with, good for you. Sadly, I am working with the constraints of having another one of these curtain panels. And actually at that, I had an 108-inch curtain panel for this, and I only have a 96-inch curtain panel for this one. So from the top of this cutout to the top of the desk is about, again, say it with me everyone, 4 feet. So I may not be able to do that full 4 feet for the drapeys, but we will have to see how it goes. Especially because I'm going to be lining them in this same silk again, which is the same as this. So we'll have to see how much fabric I have, not only in the teal, but also in the pink. And I won't bother lining the top swaggy because no one's going to be looking at this from behind. But that is my general game plan. Let's go ahead and go down to the sewing parlor and get started. All right, don't worry, Oliver is here, guarding the staple gun, thank goodness. So here's the plan as it stands, which unfortunately rhymes. So for the drapey bit, I'm going to need a piece that is at least twice as wide as I want it to finished hang. So the first one I did 18 inches times 2. This time I only want this to be about 12 inches down, like a foot down from the opening, because it's not a very tall opening. So I'm going to make that 24 inches. Now I'm going to, at the top of my trapezoid here, use the measurement of the opening, or the window, whichever, which is going to be 47 3/4 plus an inch, round that up to just 49 to make it easy. So I'm going to use this 49 measurement for the top, and then I'm going to add an additional 3 to 4, more if you want, inches on either side. The more you add, the more of like a U this is going to dip down into. So just remember how much you add on to that trapezoid is how much this is going to dip further in the center. So I'm just going to add on 4 inches to either side. I would probably only add on 3 or even less, but I am going to not leave this as its single drape. I am going to use some of this material here and a tassel to pull up the center. So this actually looks like 2 drapes, even though I'm only going to sew 1. You could make 2 drapes and have this center area be sewn into place, but I am just going to kind of cartridge pleat it and then put some decorative trimming on it and call it good. So that is the piece that I need to do the main drape across the center. Then I'm going to need my tails that go down the side here. And for those, again, it depends on how much fabric I have left over. I'd love to make them 48 inches long. I probably will not be able to achieve that. I, again, would love to make them about 20 inches to 24 inches wide. I probably will not achieve that. And then the short side, I want to make at least 24 inches long. But again, we'll see if I can achieve that. The stronger the angle is here, the more of the fold backs you will see when this is waterfalled into a pleat later. So if you have this quite narrow, you're not going to see the other side much. But when I pleat this back, the stronger the angle is here, or like the more acute the angle is, the more of the pink silk you will see shining through. So I just have to keep that in mind as I go as well. But this is the general idea, the general math that goes behind this kind of thing, and the stuff that makes me nervous about making home decor stuff as opposed to just using my block and making a jacket. And would you look at that? Now we have Sophia instead, and Oliver is up to no good. So I cut those 3 shapes, the center trapezoidal sort of shape I was talking about, and then the 2 side angled rectangle thingies, elongated rectangle polygon things, out of both the teal shantung curtains and then also out of my pink and gold silk taffeta. The pink fabric I've just had in my stash, and I don't make a lot of pink clothing, so it came into use here. And it was actually something that someone sent me as a gift, and I think it was marked Scalamandre, however you say that fabric company, which ironically is, again, like the height of silk drapery fabric. So the fanciest silk drapes you can have that I'm using for the lining of my polyester drape. But oh well. By the time I need to replace these drapes, perhaps I will be able to afford to do them all in silk. But once I had my 3 shapes and the lining for each of those, I went ahead and just bagged lined these, leaving the top edge open because it will not be seen in the end. So I just sewed the 2 side edges and the bottom of each so that I could clip my corners, turn these right side out, and press them into place. Just trim my threads away. I always try and grab my thread tails and throw them away now because, of course, I'm in a sewing room where there are cats who would like to eat my thread tails, which is unacceptable, and therefore I have to make sure to catch them and throw them away, which is troublesome for me because I used to work in a basement where I was allowed to be a chaos gremlin and throw them on the floor and then pick up everything after I was done. And now I can no longer do that. I'm having to retrain myself to be a neater and tidier creative, which would take some time, but it's a high-stakes game with cats, and I do love my cats, so I'm trying to be careful. But yes, just turn this right side out. Again, this central trapezoidal piece, I didn't have enough silk to line this in that silk as well, and since it won't be seen, I did just use the blackout fabric that comes as the lining of these curtains originally. Again, I'm not working with yardage when it comes to the teal fabric. I was working with 2 of the curtain panels from Half Price Drapes. But once I have the sides and hem of this piece pressed, I will go ahead and attach my fringe along the bottom here. And I did pick up this fringe from an Etsy shop that has a lot of really great trimmings for pretty great prices. And I have linked this shop below for any of you who also are in need of drapery trimmings. But I'm just going to pin this along the bottom here and then machine stitch this on for this piece. I actually did end up hand stitching the fringe onto the other 2 drapes because, again, where that waterfall pleat is, you will be able to see both sides, and I didn't want you to see the stitching to hold the trim on the pink side. When I was hand stitching the trim onto the first curtain I made for the actual window, I did use teal thread, which actually added a bit of teal into the fringe area, which was helpful for tying in a little bit further. If only they had gold, pink, and teal fringes, that would have been extra perfect, but I was working with what I could find online and in a price range I could fathom. But I'm doing the same sort of set of operations here for the two side drape pieces as well. Again, it's hard to describe these because it's not a trapezoid. I don't know what this shape would be called. Math people, you let me know. But here I am ironing the nice silk and the faux silk on the other side, of course, into place now that I have bag lined this. Again, I just left the top of this open. I just basted that shut later on because, again, it will be stapled to a piece of wood and not seen. And then I will pin and hand sew my trim down along the angle of this bottom edge. And anytime I am hand sewing, it's like a beacon to my cats, and Oliver will appear and try and catch the thread as I'm working with it, which does make things extra challenging. The good news is Oliver's about to jump up here and help us. Oh, there he is. Hi, Bubby. Hello, little buddy. Okay, so I have my three main sections, like the center part of the curtain and the two danglies for either side. This is one of the danglies. Now I just have to pleat this down to about, I don't know, 5 or 6 inches. It's not something, like all of this, I'm just winging it and making it up as I go. How am I pleating it? Am I following a pattern? No. I'm just gonna make like 3 large knife pleats in this and call it good until I like the way it looks. So it's much more playing with it, pleating it in different ways, seeing what I like, and then just, you know, sewing into place, or stapling, as we'll see in a moment here, into place what I end up liking. So it's not following a rule of any law here, of curtain law, in any way, shape, or form. I'm just making it up as I go and keeping what I like, honestly. And Oliver, of course, is keeping me in check and keeping me on track. Yes, this is just done in like 3 pleats here. I decided to make this pleat stick out past the front edge because then you see the lining fabric and it almost looks like a stripe of trim there. So I'm not positive I'm gonna keep that. Things are just pinned in place for now. I'm going to put the other like main swag onto the piece of 1x2 that I'm gonna use to mount this entire valance up into the nook anyway. First, and then I will put these on and see what I like best. But you can see the alternating of the pleat and the sharp angle again creates this amount of the pink showing. Although these ones are fully lined in the pink and gold silk, whereas the other curtain that I have hanging upstairs, I didn't want to use too much of this pink, so I was cautious and I only lined from like here down. So the rest of those are backed with the blackout material that the curtains come with. But these, I took the blackout material away so that they'd be a little bit thinner after noticing how thick the other swags are upstairs. But these I think came out really fun. And I just need to go ahead and do the other part now. So I will show you how I pleat the swag bit. Okay, so this is my large swag piece, which again is slightly trapezoidal. And I have my trim along the bottom here. I did just sew this on by machine instead of doing it by hand. On the other pieces I did it by hand so you couldn't see the stitching on the back. But because this won't be seen, I did just go ahead and sew that on my machine, which was much faster, of course. And I did just baste this shut after bag lining the 2 layers together. I just basted this shut along the top so nothing would move around too much. And so now what I have to do here is along the side, I need to pleat this side down to create the swag of it all. So I'm going to put 4 or 5 pleats in here, same on the other side. Again, I'm making this up. I'm pleating it, pinning it, seeing what I like, adjusting it from there. I'm not going by any sort of a pattern or rule. Okay, I have realized so that these 2 layers don't separate, I'm going to have to pin down the center of this so that I can do the center pleats first, actually, which are supposed to look the most haphazard and like I didn't plan them at all, but actually that's the one line I do need to plan a little bit ahead on. And then I'll pleat the sides down afterwards. So I'll start here. I'm actually going to just do like cartridge pleating. So I'm going to take a pleat like this and a pleat like this. And like it will be stitched together here, and then I'll take another one and that will be stitched together there. And then eventually I will loop this with a piece of rope that will look like it's actually what's holding it into place, but in reality I'll put a couple stitches here, here, and then on the backs as well. So I have this all pinned how I want it, lots of pins. in place with my big extra fun tassel hanging from the center to see if I like it. These are just, tails are pinned on. Everything is pinned into place. And I held it up on the room. I have actually got this kind of pinned over a temporary cheapy curtain rod so I could hold it up in place and see if I like it, if I want to make sure all these pleats are secured down into where they are. And then I will go ahead and staple it onto this. And this is a pre-primed 1x2. I bought an 8-foot length. This has been cut down to the correct size to fit into the hollow where it needs to go, which I better go actually just dry fit this to make sure that I have that right, because I wouldn't want to staple all this curtain stuff to here and then find out it's wrong. But what I need to do is go ahead and secure all my pleats first. So I'm going to go in here and just hand stitch everything down and secure it into place. This will be covered by this little bit of ropey rope trim here. And I just need to secure my pleats along the side. All these are just knife pleats that are pleated up along the side here. I did well, it's 2 inches of pleat, but it's 2 inches down, 2 inches up. So 4-inch pleats with 1 inch in between up both sides with about extra 2 inches at the top. Here I took 2-inch pleats and then I combined a couple of them because I wanted this to be a bit more pinched. Again, not following a formula, just playing with this until I liked how it looked. And now I will go ahead and secure all my pleats and I will come back to you. So I think these are, what, at least 1/4 inch, probably considered 1/2 inch staples here that I'm going to use in my little electric staple gun. I can link to one of these online. They're super useful as opposed to just having the, you have to plug it in, but still nice and useful. Okay, the 1x2, I have some pre-drilled holes. So I have one hole all the way through in the center and then about halfway through either side outwards from there so that I can screw this up straight into the drywall if I should like to. It's probably, that opening is probably framed out. So there's probably wood there, honestly. I don't think it'll be like just a piece of drywall. I am just going to use drywall screws because they work in either wood or drywall. That's my understanding. So I have some of those. I also have 2 pre-drilled holes in the end in case I do end up needing to secure this with an L bracket as well. I can go ahead and slip those in there. I just have that pre-drilled already so that I can do so without having to take everything down and put it back up if that ends up being needed. Here is what my pleats look like now that I've tacked them down. Again, I've just kind of whip stitched the full layerage of it all by hand and then tacked each pleat as well along the top and just done that by hand. I did the same sort of thing for my funky little looser pleats here in the middle, which of course they're not done in any sort of even way, but it's supposed to look like it's just naturally scrunched, right? So less planned than the side bits. And the top of this is still just raw. You can finish it. Also, there's no reason necessarily not to, other than that it's not going to be seen. So this is the top that will be facing the opening or the window, top of the window frame if you're doing this in a window. And this will be where I screw up into. So I need to put this along here and staple along here so that it will hang down like so. Hopefully that makes any sense. I'll go ahead and staple these on, and then I'll show you how I layer on this shawly parts on the side. All right, so I've stapled the first inch of this onto the top, like so. We still have my drill holes here, and I actually poked those through with an awl in case I can't drill through fabric, but I think that'll be the least of the drill's problems. So we have that going on here. This does hang off just a little bit, which is what I was hoping for, because when I put it up in there, this will get scrunched up between the, I left a tiny bit of excess between the piece of wood and the wall, and that's gonna get stuck in with the fabric. Hopefully that makes any sense. Not really. Now I'm just going to staple my little swaggy swags on top of my swaggy swag. And then we get to go install this, which will be very fun for me. So something to note, I just stapled these on top, but I left myself a good inch to wrap around the edge here so that this loops onto the back, and so that this swag will kind of be able to loop this in like a pocket as well, and really encompasses everything once this is up like this, installed in place. Once again, there's a cat here to assist. In this case, mostly she's complaining. Fia, what do you think? The curtain. She is hung. I mean, if we can call this a curtain. The drapey thing. And doesn't that trim match the walls perfectly? I knew that pink silk matched those walls. Of course, the teal doesn't, but we're making it work. So now this corner is much more drapey and fun. Same technique to create this, by the way. If you would like to make one yourself and you find this to be in any way instructive, whereas it's mostly just me making it up as I go, and I'm actually quite happy with how these came out. I'm very glad that this room is extra trimmed out now, and this looks so much better with the window painted black. It was already kind of painted shed anyway, so why not just add to the problem, and there you go. But now all I have left to do here is to rehang these candle sconcy thingies lower down. They were hung with command hooks, so I just took the command strips off. These two are hung on nails, but I might have to rearrange things to hang up all the various little mirrors in here that I want to add. And then this will be a little mirrored and jeweled box within a jewel box, because why not? I was just rehanging the mirrors and stuff inside of here today, so I brought the sconces down like so, and I rearranged the mirrors. Of course, from down here on the floor, you can see the empty space, which eventually, over time, I would like to fill in with more tiny mirrors, if I can pick some up while I'm out thrifting or antiquing. And someone is mowing their lawn, of course. Anyway, how did I mount this up in here? Because I never really covered that. Again, the little bit of wood fits up here into the nook. It's about a ½ inch shorter than this distance is, so that I could wrap that fabric around. Yes, there's a cat nearby. And then if you come up underneath here, I just went through those pre-drilled holes, used those 2-inch drywall screws, and screwed up into the frame of this opening. Of course, you could do the same for a window, probably with less than a 2-inch drywall screw. Something a little smaller might be better for when putting one of these in a window. But in this window, I was actually able to just hold this up here with tension. And you could possibly do something like this. There's a cat climbing on me, you can't see it. You could do something like this. Oliver, really? Where you did a rod pocket or something like that across the top and did a small tension rod in there. That is another option. As I'm trying to talk to you, so you can see the difficulty. Hello there, Zamzams. Xander is here to let us know that there are too many birds outside, and by that he means he wants to attack them. See you, Zan. And here is the pink and red dressing room with its draperies, finished for now. Of course, this room is about 95% done. By that, I just mean that I want to replace the rug in here because the colors of this polyester IKEA number are just not quite right in here, and even the texture. But if and when I do finally find a rug for this space, I will let you know and update you with the real final look. But anyhow, thank you as always for watching this video today, and especially thank you to my patrons who of course make my work and my home possible. And as always, I'll be back with more sewing, vintage fashion, costuming, and crafting real soon, so I'll see you then. Bye.